Welcome to Prog and Progeny, episode whatever it is. Hello Tallulah, what episode are we on?
14.
Well done. I'm glad somebody knows what's going on around here.
Or 15. I'm not sure. Our files are pretty messy. I think we need to spend some time organising.
Well, it is a bit confusing with the book chapters and the episodes. I think we're just disorganised. It's a Kelly trait, I think.
Well, this week's episode, the hawk-eyed amongst you will realise it's late, and that is because we've both been on holiday, so sorry about that. But it is worth the wait because Dad did an interview with Ian, which I had the joy of editing. I sadly wasn't there for it because they did it at the studio, but I found it a very interesting listen, and there were lots of stories that weren't in the book because Ian's memory proved very good. He remembered things that you might have forgotten.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think once we started talking, I wouldn't say it was an interview. It was more two old blokes having a conversation.
Yeah, sorry. You were playing a bit of an interviewer role, I felt.
Yeah, but there was a lot of "Do you remember?" "Oh yeah," and laughing.
And then lack of elaboration, maybe in some areas.
No detail. Just before we start, can I just quickly say we've got a few new subscribers that I'm just going to give a quick shout out to. JKL, hi. Klaus Nygaard, he actually wrote a draft of a Marillion biography years ago and kindly helped me out by sharing it with me when I was writing mine, which had a lot of details in it that I had either forgotten or didn't know in the first place. So thanks for that, Klaus. And there's Roger Harvey, Shane McKee, Chris Staples and Nicholas Evans, all new subscribers to our Patreon.
Excellent.
Page.
Thank you everyone.
Welcome.
Yeah,
I think it's a fun conversation between me and Ian, but it's a little bit rambling and not really applicable to the chapter. So I think what we'll do is split the chapter, have half of it in this week's episode, and then Tallulah and I will have a proper conversation about the chapter next time.
We will further deconstruct it because it feels like quite a momentous moment, the writing of Misplaced Childhood and Kaylee, obviously.
And the recording of it as well. So yeah, we'll dive into that next time. I hope you enjoy it. Right then, so what was that you were just playing?
Lucy found a tape in a box, well, loads of tapes and old film footage and stuff, cassettes and reel-to-reels, and she took it to a shop and got it all transferred. And one of them, the reel-to-reel, said Ian practicing. So I was between 14 and 17, and I had a double drum kit set up in my parents' living room.
Bet they love that.
And it's just me practicing, but it's unreal.
Yeah, it sounded really impressive.
Yeah, it impressed me. I can't play like that anymore.
When did you start playing? To get that good at that age, you must have started quite young.
I started proper lessons when I was about 11.
Right.
And I was, I was fanatical. So.
Yeah, I know the feeling. You like every hour of every day.
Yeah, everything. Even a practice pad set up in my car because it was an automatic car.
Oh, you had a car?
I had a car. When I was 17, I had a car and a practice pad set up in the middle of where the gear stick would be, so I could practice left-hand stuff while I was driving.
No.
Yeah.
Did you have a girlfriend? Like me, were you too busy practicing?
No, I had a girlfriend. Yeah. There was a girlfriend. She used to give me a hard time if I brake too hard because the contact lenses used to fly out.
So, I haven't even introduced you. I'm really rubbish at this podcasting. This is Ian Mosley.
Who am I?
Yeah, everybody listening to this podcast will certainly know who you are, so there's probably no need to introduce you.
Yeah, morning, Mark. I enjoyed the one with Simon that I listened to the other day.
It was really nice to talk to him, actually.
Yeah, he's a nice bloke, isn't he?
He is, really nice, yeah.
And he got me a great drum sound, actually.
Yeah, he was talking about that, the drum sound at the Manor.
Yeah.
Saying how good it was, yeah.
He was really good. When I was freelancing, you'd walk into a studio to do a session and you'd know within 5 minutes whether the engineer was on the same wavelength as you,
Right.
And Simon was, he didn't ask me to do anything really.
Yeah.
Nick asked me he said, there's a bit of a strange sound coming off your snare, can you change the head? I thought, well, it's a new head. I spent about 10 minutes just poncing about and having a coffee and a cigarette, and then I said, how's that, Nick? He said, that's great. I hadn't done anything.
Well, they used to do that to us, didn't they? play us a mix, and then we'd listen to it and we go, oh, you know, the guitar's a bit loud or the bass is a bit quiet, and he'd go, everybody out the room.
Yeah.
We'd all go out the room, and then they'd do nothing, and then call us back in and go, how's that? And we'd all go, yeah, sounds better.
Yeah, it's much better.
Yeah, so I think that's that's just what everybody gets up to in the studio. But by the time we got to Fugazi, it was all kind of falling apart, wasn't it? What did you think about that then? You know, when you join a band and it's shambles.
Well, it wasn't a shambles. It was just a different mode of thought, really, in the process of. I remember I picked Pete up first.
In the staff car.
Yeah, in the Merc staff car, which was the remains of a Mercedes.
Which everybody was so impressed with.
Yeah, I knocked on Pete's door in Aylesbury. He answered the door and he looked about 11. I thought, oh my God. And then I picked Steve up as well. He looked about 12, and then drove to Rockfield.
Yeah,
and
I remember.
It was all very relaxed though. The first night we had dinner. I remember saying to Fish, what happened to Jonathan Mover? Because he was your drummer. But it was a bit of a Spinal Tap situation, I think, wasn't it, with drummers at the time?
Yeah, we'd had Andy Ward and then John Martyr, but he was kind of never permanent.
And I said to Fish, what happened to Jonathan? Because I mean, Jonathan's a great player. And he said, well, he was American. And I said, oh, you'll get on well with my wife. She's American. That was our opening gambit, you know. But there was a glint in his eye, and I was sort of smiling as well. So yeah. I think we all sort of hit it off pretty quickly, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
And the playing, once we got in the studio and started playing.
Well, we were all terrified of you because I think, you know, you suddenly raised the standard quite a lot from where we were, you know, in terms of like playing ability and skill. And I think you being more conscientious and professional on stage meant that especially me and Pete, would be stay sober, you know.
I mean, I just remember feeling totally at home playing the stuff you had together for Fugazi in Rockfield.
We'd worked out Punch Judy with Jonathan, hadn't we?
And with that kind of Bo Diddley feel thing, and that was up my street as well.
And we'd started working on Incubus, because we hadn't even finished the song by the time we got to The Manor, or Fugazi, the title track. They were still yet to be written, really. No,
I remember the first day at the Manor. Yeah, we hadn't even looked at the title track.
Yeah.
I think we got inspired by, I'm pretty sure it was right, we went in and watched a film called Cat People.
That's right, yeah, with Natasha Kinski, is it?
And the
soundtrack was David...
The soundtrack, there was this bit that just went dum 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 dum. I thought, oh, that's really nice. And we went in the studio and jammed straight after it, and jamming that feel.
And it kind of just came to us, inspiration.
Yeah, it was really good. But that was quite mad.
Who did the music? Was that... I thought David Bowie had something to do with it as well on that movie. I'll have to look it up.
It was something to do with him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was. It was David Bowie. I thought it was all quite good fun for me, but apparently there was lots of stuff going on, and I wasn't really aware of a lot of it.
Well, yeah, you were still the hired session musician at that point. It wasn't until we got towards the end of the recording that we said, why don't you join the band, you know, as a full-time member? And you said... Oh, I can, but I can't live on 350 quid a week.
No, you were getting less than that, I think.
No, I think it was 350, and you asked us to put it up, or asked John to put the wages up to 500 a week. A month. It was a month.
A month?
Yeah.
I remember that happening, because it was on a tour bus that happened. I was sitting up the back of the tour bus, and John asked me, and I said, oh, really? Is that all you're getting? And he disappeared down the front of the bus and came back and said, everyone's had a rise, and it's all great. And I said, oh, well, that's brilliant then. So I was, you know, everybody really liked me after that.
Yeah. So did you say yes, even though the money wasn't very good?
Oh, yeah, because I remember the first gig, sitting behind the kit on the first gig with you all.
Where was that then?
I think it was a university in Wales or somewhere. Or
where did we go? Yeah, you might be right. Do you remember that time we were supposed to be going to Denmark or Norway or somewhere, and we were leaving from Great Yarmouth, and we played a gig there. Were you in the band then? Yeah, I think you were.
Don't remember that.
And then Fish punched some bloke in the jaw and broke his jaw, and then
Oh, I don't remember that.
And Paul Lewis's briefcase with all the gig takings got nicked.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was great Yarmouth. We'd never been there before or since.
Well, the other thing was that towards the end of the Manor thing, I said, well, look, we've got gigs coming up. Shouldn't we rehearse?
And we were like, what's that?
Yeah, rehearse what? And no one seemed that bothered, apart from Pete. So just me.
Nothing changes.
Yeah, nothing's changed. So me and Pete were in the studio just going through the tracks because it's quite a lot of material to learn. But I just remember sitting behind the kit in the sound check and playing and thinking, oh, this is all a bit special. This is a real band. It's special, you know. But definitely had to change because, you know, as a session musician, I'd go in and you're expected to do everything in one or two takes and have product at the end of the day. And with a band, it's very difficult, especially with Marillion. It's very different.
I think you're right. You know why? I think it was Wales or Bangor or somewhere like that, because we went up to Liverpool to listen to the mix of Fugazi at Amazon Studios.
I remember that.
Yeah, because they hadn't finished mixing it by the time we went on tour.
Yeah.
That's probably why we didn't do much rehearsing as well, because we were probably still hanging around in studios, you know, trying to hear the final mixes.
I remember getting Chris Carron in to play tablas on Assassin.
Yeah.
Because he was a top session player that my father, who was a musical fixer for lots of West End shows and films and whatnot, he used Chris Carron a lot. He'd fixed a lot of West End shows and film sessions, and so I used to go to like Denham Film Studios and hand out the music to everybody, help my dad out, and Chris Carron was often there. But I didn't realise he was a brilliant tabla player. He was the drummer in the Michael Parkinson show, Dudley Moore Trio, all that stuff.
So
really nice guy.
Jazz.
So that was it Psalm East?
We did do some in Psalm East, yeah, along with about 10 other studios. I don't remember being there when he did his session.
I remember it all getting a bit tense. I remember being at Abbey Road mixing a track.
Mixing Incubus with Tony Platt.
Yes, and I remember everyone was really feeling a bit tense.
Yeah. What did you think about the Cinderella Search session? Do you remember that?
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Because it was we just went in and did it.
It was just us and Simon. Nick wasn't with us on that one.
Yeah, it was still really like that track.
It should have been on the album, really.
Yeah.
If we'd done it in time for the album, it definitely would have displaced one of the others, I think.
It's at Psalm West, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a good coffee machine.
Good session, definitely.
Yeah. No, I remember that well.
So then we did that tour, almost got dropped by EMI.
Cops and Rays tour, was it?
Oh, that's right, yeah, in the summer, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then we went to Barwell Court to do some writing. Do you remember that? What do you remember about Barwell Court? Misplaced Childhood.
Oh, I don't remember that. I remember clutching at straws at Barwell Court.
Yeah, we started off in Barwell Court.
But Berlin, I mean, I remember you and me going to Berlin to do a recce of Hans Ton Studios.
That was when it started. Yeah, I don't know why did they select us to go.
I don't know, Mark, because it's a really stupid decision.
Because I think you had the reputation of being the guy who knew about being in the studio because you had a lot more experience than us, and I was probably the one that knew what a mixing desk looked like more than anybody else. I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't clued up at all with studios, really. I mean, I just. Used to go in and say, get us a great drum sound, will you?
Yeah.
But Chris Kimsey recommended us go to this bar.
It was called the Café Untro.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. And he said, just say Chris sent you, and they'll look after you. And it was, unfortunately, it was buy 10 tequilas and get one free.
Sounds like a great deal.
And we had 22 each.
And we were staying at the Kempinski Hotel.
Very nice hotel, but I couldn't manage the bed because it was everything was spinning. I just remember lying on the bathroom floor with my face against the bathroom tiles on the floor just to, cool. And I was still drunk the next morning, and then we got back.
And everybody said, what was it
like?
What was
it like? I go,
great, we loved it. Yeah.
Well, who was Chris Kimsey working with over there? Was it Killing Joke or...?
When we went to visit?
Yeah.
I think it might have been, yeah. Well, they were definitely there before us because they famously let off that fire extinguisher in the control room. and fucked the desk. It was an Eve desk, and every time you moved any of the knobs, they went. So it was, yeah.
It was bizarre though, wasn't it? That studio at the time.
It was great. Do you remember there was like a cafe down below?
Yeah.
It was called the Capo.
Yeah.
And there was a guy in there. I can't remember the guy's name, but he had a beard, and he definitely had a bit of a drink problem, because I remember he'd turn up in the morning, open the bar, make us poached eggs for breakfast.
I remember that. Yeah.
And he would pour himself a glass of red wine and sparkling water mixed together. That was his first drink of the day. Yeah.
Oh God.
And then we'd have these. We played that game, didn't we? With the you got 2 dice, and you have to basically say what you've got without letting the other person see. And you always had to get a higher score than the previous player. So if you didn't have a higher score, you had to lie. And then if they called you out, then you had to take a shot of Mampa.
I remember Chris Kimsey sitting in the big room, the studio, and I was actually playing him the whole album, because we'd been on tour with it.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. I think the only part of the album that we hadn't finished was how to get from Espresso Bongo, or Bongo Bongo as we used to call it, into the next section. And Fish hadn't written the words for Childhood's End, which was like the second last track up before White Feather. But apart from that, we'd pretty much written it. It was all done. And
White Feather, I remember recording that. Everyone was very drunk.
Yeah, do you remember we got Mark Freegard to do some singing?
Yeah, yeah.
Mark Freegard, just for the listeners, was the mix engineer. He came over from England, and we got him completely pissed, and then said, right, you're going to have to do some backing vocals now.
There's a tape somewhere of us doing that.
Yeah.
Everyone really very drunk. And I remember sitting I'd record all the drums, and everyone was going into Berlin partying, I think. And I don't know where you were, actually, but I was sitting in the control room just listening to stuff. Suddenly the doors opened, and there were 2 military policemen.
That was when we were mixing. That was upstairs, wasn't it, in the mix suite? Yeah.
And it was like, shit, what do they want? And they came in and said, the tall guy, what's his name? Fish. And we said, yeah. And the smaller guy, Pete, well, he's in a bit of trouble. And we're going, Jesus, what's happened? You know, they've been out in Berlin. And anyway, it was a wind-up.
They were fans, weren't they?
Yeah, and Fish had got a lift back with the military police and go and wind them up.
Yeah, I remember Pete doing that in a tour bus in America once. There was some police, and he said to them, go on the bus.
That was a secret service.
And do a raid, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the bus, and then they come on and they go, right, everybody put your hands on the ceiling. And
yeah, everyone totally freaked out. I remember doing the signings after that show, and there was one guy who we made friends with, Jeff, but at the time he worked for the Secret Service, and he was giving me hats and things. He gave me a hat, and on the front it said Secret Service.
Right.
And then he gave me something like secret. Everything was labelled Secret Service, and I just remember saying to him, it's not very much of a secret, is it? But back to Berlin, I know you remember it, that little cafe that you and me went to every morning.
Right, yes.
Well, no, I mean, we were just sitting there having coffee and stuff, and there was a chap reading a newspaper, and he looked very, a tweed jacket with leather elbow patches, and as he was reading his paper, there was a candle in the middle of the table, and it caught light to the paper, and it...
Just a little flame at first, wasn't it?
Really
just
little.
Licking up the back of the newspaper.
Yeah, and it was a real Peter Sellers moment, I mean, a Clouseau moment, because he tried to not attract attention to himself and tried to put it out, and it just got worse and worse, and it just went up in flames. So you and me were crying with laughter, of course. It was a very incredibly vibey place, though, wasn't it? Berlin.
Oh, it's brilliant. Time. Yeah, because we used to do some recording, then go out for dinner.
Yeah.
And then come back and do some more.
Yeah.
And depending on, if we were sober enough, we'd get something good or not. And then we'd go out again.
Mm.
Were you in the car? Because Thomas, the sound engineer, he had an old Volvo, didn't he?
Yeah.
And Chris Kimsey had hired a Honda Jazz, a little
car,
Honda.
Yeah. We all used to get into that.
And we were driving down the Kudamm or somewhere in Berlin, and I was in the car with Thomas, and a few people with Chris. And then we said to Thomas, just bump into the back of him. And he bumps into the back of him and pushes him into the middle of the road at the traffic light, that sort of thing.
Mm.
And then we were zooming along. Next thing you know, Chris slams on the brakes and we hit him really hard in the back and completely dents the front of the Volvo. the wing is folded in against the wheel. Thomas is driving along and he's making a sound like a siren. It's going, you know, as the thing's grinding on the tyre. We had to drive around this corner and he just abandoned the car. We tried to pull it back out, but we couldn't. But, and then that was the first bit of damage we did to the car. And then like a few days later, we pull up at the studio. Steve Brothers opens his door and he's in the back, and Thomas decides to reverse back and takes the fucking door off on a lamppost.
I don't know. It was all very odd. I remember looking out. You could look out over the Berlin Wall as well.
Yeah,
from the studio.
I just remember Thomas used to have one of those loudhailers, didn't he? Do you remember he used to hang out the window and shout at people? Halt!
I remember playing 8-ball with Depeche Mode.
Oh, that's right. They were in the studio next door, weren't they?
Yeah, they beat us. They thrashed us.
Yeah.
I thought, gee, I've just been beaten by some bloke wearing a leather skirt. They were nice guys, actually. They borrowed my ashtray because I had an ashtray that pressed the button on the top and it span round. One of them came out to me and said, can I borrow your ashtray? I said, yeah, sure, why? He said, it's got a great hi-hat sound. I said, well, I've got some hi-hat cymbals if you want. No, I want the ashtray. It sounds... Yeah, all right, yeah. Whatever you're into.
What about the... do you remember the time when we went to that restaurant and me and Thomas had a horseradish eating competition?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And then we bet fish that he wouldn't go to the bathroom and come back completely naked.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah, he did.
I was amazed we didn't get arrested, really.
Everyone seemed to enjoy it. I remember in the restaurant people were clapping.
Yeah, all he wore was that belt, that like leather belt with all the little pockets in it, where he used to keep his cigarettes. That was all he was wearing. Oh well.
Yeah, it was mad.
No, it was a good album. Good fun making it anyway.
Yeah. No, it came together pretty quickly, really. But I remember the first couple of weeks being slightly traumatic because we went in and listened to our efforts so far. It sounded really flat. It was like, oh dear me. We had a bit of a crisis meeting, didn't we? It doesn't sound at all expensive. And we had a word with Chris and he said, just leave me alone for a little while.
Well, we phoned Hugh Stanley Clarke and told him that we were thinking of knocking it on the head.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, that's why he flew out.
Oh.
By the time he got there, it was all fine. Yeah.
Oh, it's like Chris just spent an hour or so just tweaking things and EQing things, and we went down and it sounded great. So.
Yeah, well, he went up to the mix suite, didn't he, up the top, which was a much better sounding system.
I haven't been back there at all since those days, so it's very different now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think next time we go, I should have done it this time, but I went and had a look on the outside, but I don't think there was anybody there. But I know somebody who emailed them in advance and they said you can come in and have a look round. So
I'd like to do that.
Let's do it next time.
Yeah.
It'd be great.
Yeah, I really love that big room.
Yeah, well, it's still the same, I think. I think they haven't changed it.
That was good.
I'm sure.
Do you remember recording...
do you remember recording Lady Nina?
I was going to say Lady Nina on that... I had a Yamaha drum machine that I just got. I can't remember which model it was, but it was kind of novelty value. So...
Well, it was literally...
We all played... I said, you play that bass drum, I'll play this, and we all had a button each to press, and just made it up on the spot, really.
Well, I think it's because we'd finished recording, so they'd taken all the kit and the mics down. So it was a case of, we need to do an extra track. And you said, we'll have to just do it on this drum machine.
Yeah. It worked well, though.
It actually turned out all right, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
Considering we spent the best part of an afternoon on it.
I know.
Well, Hugh Stanley Clarke, he came out, and as you said, we took him out, got him completely pissed, and then said, right, now sit down and listen to the album, and he fell asleep.
Yeah, he did. Could have played him anything. It was really good. But none of us knew, did we, that Kayleigh was going to be such a monster
No, and
hit.
I think thinking about it now, I bet if we'd put Lady Nina on the album, as he wanted, after we'd had a hit with Kayleigh and Lavender, we could have probably put that out and had another hit.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it's kind of more of a single than Heart of Lothian, isn't it?
Didn't they want to put it out on an American version of the album?
Yeah, I think we were just too much purists in those days. No, we don't want to have success.
No. Whew.
We're artists.
I do remember, though, once we became really successful doing that gig at the Marquee, fan club gig, and getting a really hard time from some of the fans because we'd been successful.
No, you're sold out.
Sold out, yeah. And I'm thinking, well,
We didn't sell out, we were just doing what we wanted. Well, do you want to knock it on the head there?
Is that enough?
Kind of, that's where I'm up to with the book, around about Misplaced Childhood. So.
Oh, I'll always come back for others, Mark.
Yeah.
For some reason, I can remember loads of this, what happened in all of these.
Well, once you start talking about it, it kind of comes back, doesn't it?
Yeah. The bags that we threw off the top of that hotel room, that was on the Cops and Rays tour.
When was that?
It was when we filled up those bags with water.
Oh, yeah,
And
the
look-
Cops and Rays tour. Now I remember
Yeah.
that. When we nearly killed Fiona.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was your fault.
And then the other one was in is it Leon, with the fireworks on the balcony.
Yeah.
That was the same tour, I think.
It was, because it was in the summer, and we put that big banger outside the door of the restaurant, do you remember?
Yeah.
We were like a couple of schoolboys.
Yeah.
Huge
Kabam!
banger, and then it's kabam, and everybody in the restaurant goes, oh, that'll be Mark. And then on that same tour, do you remember that the fireworks, we'd have these rockets, and we had 2 cars,
Yeah.
and you and me were in one car and the rest of the band were in another, I think, and we'd sort of get ahead, pull over the hill, and then get the rockets ready, and as the car appeared over the top of the hill, you'd launch the rockets at the car.
Yeah, it was really stupid. It was like Top Gear, wasn't it? We just kept ramming each other. You know, at traffic lights, we'd go out and ram the car in front of us.
Where was that? I think it was in France somewhere. We had 2 hired cars, and Privet drove one of them. We arrive at this gig, the whole side of the car's missing, and the battery's hanging out the side.
The engine was hanging out the side, yeah. And that was on Steve Rothery's Amex card, apparently.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, we had some fun. That was great.
Yeah. You know, it all got out of hand, didn't it, when sort of...
No wonder we didn't earn any money. We must have
Yeah.
spent a fortune in, hotel damage and car damage and...
I think so, but I do tend to just remember the good times, I mean, we had some good times with Fish as well. We had some really good times.
Yeah. It only started going bad round about Clutching at Straws, didn't it? During the tour, really, I think. By the end of the Clutching at Straws tour, it felt like things
was horrible.
weren't good.
Yeah.
And then it just got worse.
For me, it was that East Berlin gig we did.
Yeah.
It was an amazing gig.
Our biggest ever headline.
Yeah.
To this day, actually.
Well, it was a brilliant gig, and I just remember coming off and said to Fish, "What did you think of that?" He said, "Didn't really enjoy it." And I thought, "Oh dear,
Oh, yeah, we're in trouble."
But anyway, forgive and forget.
Yeah. Right.
All right, Mark. Are you going to edit it then?
Yeah, I'll let Tallulah do that.
All right.
Thank you. Can I have the microphone back?
Oh, fucking hell.
Well, that was fun.
That was great.
I was going to say, I hope it was worth listening to. It's so hard to know because, we were just saying, oh, hey, do you remember this and do you remember that? It seemed like it was full of a lot of times when we were drunk or acting like idiots.
They were the most interesting parts, I thought.
Yeah, and I have to say, it wasn't always like that. Quite a lot of the time, we were working, we were touring, we were gigging, we were writing and recording, as everybody knows. And you kind of remember these crazy, fun times.
Yeah, well, we spoke about this with Simon, about how he didn't want it to just be all about the crazy times, which you obviously stick in your memory. He wanted to recount, the hard work as well.
Yeah, and the good things that we did together, yeah.
I liked the story about Fish coming out of the bathroom completely naked, apart from his... Was it like a weapons belt?
Yeah, do you know what? I think Susie bought it second-hand in Portobello Road or Camden Market or somewhere like that and gave it to Fish because I think she had bought it with me in mind, but when I took one look at it, it literally was like a big, thick, heavy leather belt with these leather pouches all the way around it, almost
bullets.
like you would have for bullets or something, yeah. But they were the kind of size that you would fit a packet of cigarettes in them, and as Fish was practically a chain smoker in those days, he always used to have about 60 or 80 cigarettes on him at any one time. So she gave it to him and he loved it and wore it probably continuously for a couple of years.
Oh my God.
And even when he wasn't wearing anything else, as that evening transpired.
Yeah, lots of funny stories in that chapter, actually, that you touched on and that we'll also touch on next time. I think you need to elaborate on the story about dropping the massive water bombs, because you both kind of go, and you remember when we dropped that thing and we nearly killed Fiona, and you're both laughing about it, but you don't really explain it. So can you tell the story?
I will tell the story. So, yeah, because I think Ian tells it in his book.
It's one of my favourite stories that you've ever told.
If you've heard it before, you can always skip forward a few But yeah, so I think we were in Alicante, which is obviously most people know is like a holiday resort in Spain. And as a lot of these hotels, they tend to be one room deep and very wide and very tall, so that everybody's got a balcony with a view of the sea. And then the ground floor of the hotel is usually huge because they've got the restaurant and everything down there. So you have this big flat roof, and at the edge of the flat roof, you could see from the top floor where we were, you could see there was some tables and chairs laid out. And we had a press day, I think it was, because there was interviews going on around these big round tables, which looked like the size of about a 10 pence piece from where we were, up on the 24th floor or whatever. And loads of people. And then somebody, I'm not going to say it was Ian, but somebody had the idea that we could throw a water bomb and it could land on the roof just before you get to the tables and splash water over everybody down below. But we didn't have any water bombs, but there was a bin bag in the bathroom bin, so you can imagine the size of that. And I filled it up with about a gallon of water, tied a knot in it, and, well, with Ian's encouragement,
launched.
Gave it a good lob, aiming for the edge of the roof, for maximum impact. Unfortunately, as soon as it left my hands, I could see that it was really a little bit of an overshoot, and it was going past the edge of the roof. I mean, it couldn't have been a better shot if I tried. It landed right in the middle of one of these tables. But what you couldn't see from up above was that the table was covered in glasses. The people had been drinking drinks all afternoon, and there was a lot of empty glasses and a few full drinks as well. And this water bomb, weighing about 10 kilos, exploded in the middle of the table, and you just saw everybody fall backwards like a real bomb had gone off. Total chaos.
It's quite dangerous.
Really dangerous, yeah, because I think there was broken glass everywhere and everything. This is what I heard afterwards. Of course, lots of people rushed to their balconies to have a look to see what all the commotion was. And of course, they all look up. And Ian, stroke of genius, looks up as well, as if, where did that come from, But we were on the top floor, so I'm not sure what people made of that.
Weren't the police called?
The police were called, and it instantly, and thinking on his feet, said, "Mark, you're on your own," and left.
Because it was your room.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to do, so I just hid under the bed. It's pretty pathetic, isn't it?
For 2 hours, right?
I stayed there for a long time, yeah, until the police had been and gone, and then finally, sheepishly showed my face. Fiona was furious with me. Luckily, nobody was hurt. They all suspected it was me. But yeah, luckily I wasn't arrested and put in a cell for the night. So there you go. That was one of my fun pranks that kind of went a bit wrong.
I always hear about. It always seems like all the pranks that you did that I find really funny always seem to be with Ian in tow.
I think it's like when we get together, or when we got together when we were younger and more adventurous, we always seem to end up doing crazy things, like. And Ian was always sober, and
Yeah.
I think it's not, you can't blame it on the booze. I think he just liked having fun. But yeah, the fireworks as well. We had a tour where it just went crazy. We were just letting off bangers and rockets everywhere. One time in Paris, we decided to let some rockets off from our balcony, and I put the rockets in a bottle like you do and launched the rocket. And of course, instead of going up into the sky, it just hit the balcony above, bounced off and went straight down into the street below and flew along the street.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, not clever.
But anyway, entertaining and good content for the podcast.
And luckily, I think nobody got hurt. The only person that got hurt, I think, or was damaged by the fireworks was Paul Lewis, our tour manager. There was a venue where we would light these huge bangers and drop them into, there was like manhole covers with a little hole in the middle on the floor of this venue, and you drop the banger into the hole, and when it exploded, the manhole cover would lift up in the air like about 3 feet, like a solid iron.
Oh my God.
So a lot of pressure from the explosion, and Fish threw a banger into a room where Paul was and shut the door and held the door shut when the banger went off. and it caused him damage in one of his ears. He ended up with tinnitus for the rest of his life after that. So that kind of put an end to the fun.
Oh my God.
Yeah, poor Paul. We had a keyboard tech, Dave Saunders, and we used to call him Deaf Dave because he was deaf in one ear, because that was Gary Moore caused his deafness. Gary Moore's a guitar player. He's not with us anymore, so I can say what I like about him. But yeah, Dave was doing something with one of his guitar amps, and he plugged the amp in, and Gary Moore it was like really loud, and he was right next to it, and Gary Moore just hit a big chord on his guitar and blasted the sound right in his ear and made him deaf in one ear.
That's bad.
Yeah. So Deaf Dave after that.
I can see how that comes part and parcel a little bit with working in music, but having a fireworks set off next to your ear, you wouldn't go into the job thinking that was a risk factor, would you?
Health and safety?
Yeah.
What's that?
Anyway, that was a good chat with Ian, and we should get him on again when I can be present.
Definitely. I think he quite enjoyed reminiscing.
Yeah. It was good to listen to. It just sounded like a chat between friends. I think you both sometimes forgot you were recording because you would often not elaborate for the audience.
I know. I'll apologise to everybody for that. It was a bit unprofessional.
I found it interesting, and I was it was good to have a third party.
Yeah, I think that's why you need to be there, because then you can ask the questions that I'm not going to ask because I already know the answers.
Prompt to elaborate. Anyway, cut this out.
Yeah.
I think we should draw it to a close.
Okay. Let me just say, summer's over almost, and we're back into full podcast mode now, so we'll do some catching up.
Yeah, we're going to do catching up. We'll do more on this chapter, which is exciting. I really enjoyed reading this chapter, and also we've got a listeners' questions episode coming up.
Why don't we do the listeners' questions episode as a like a Zoom chat, and we can publish it? So if we ask everybody who's sent a question in, or anybody who wants to send a question in, that's in our subscribers group on Patreon, send us a question through Patreon and let us know if you want to appear in the Zoom chat with us, and then we can do it live.
Yeah.
We can do it, well, live or pre-record, whatever, but we could air it, yeah, with people asking their own questions, which could be fun.
Yeah.
Let's see what the response is to that particular idea.
Let us know if you like that idea, and we will do it. Great. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, take care, Lula.
See you next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Chapter 9. Do you remember? There's a good reason why people single money out as the root of all evil. It's because they don't know what the Bible actually says about money. The Bible doesn't harangue cold, hard cash. God's no idiot. Churches cost a fortune to build, and all those cornices won't pay for themselves. But reserve its ire for those who love money and sully their hands with the stuff. I'm with God and renowned wit Dorothy Parker on this, and on reflection, it sounds like they were both singing from the same hymn sheet at one point. If you want to know what God thinks about money, just look at the people he gave it to. That was Dorothy. I doubt even God would talk about himself in the third person. Not that we're worried about people being given money, more about the ones trying to take it from us. When you've almost nothing to go around, it's easy to agree to share everything equally. The real test comes when the money starts coming in, as we were about to find out. Americans have a reputation for being more litigious than most, and in this respect, Jonathan Mover was about to revert very much to type. Not long after Fugazi was released, we received a communication from Mover's father, who just happened to be a lawyer. Mover was demanding a share of the publishing royalties for songs on Fugazi. We must have been feeling guilty for firing him, or we were suffering from a momentary lack of reason, because why else would we agree to give him 10% of Punch and Judy? As the drummer, it was his job to play the drums. He had direction from Fish for the sort of beat to play. Remember the whole Bo Diddley thing? And the 7/8 time signature came from the music I wrote. That leaves very little, if anything, for the drummer, no matter how inventive, to have written. But it does beg the question, what constitutes songwriting in a band? There are a number of examples that might help answer this knotty quandary that has perplexed band members since time immemorial. An infamous case concerns the Rolling Stones and their song The Last Time. Basically, the Stones borrowed the chorus from This May Be the Last Time by the Staples Singers, who had in turn adapted it from a traditional gospel song that was long out of copyright. Even if we did know who wrote it, as long as the writer's been dead for at least 70 years, then the song would be considered to be in the public domain, or in layman's terms, royalty-free. In those cases where a new arrangement of a traditional song is created, the arranger is free to claim the songwriting royalties. Led Zeppelin used this to great effect on their debut album. This little nugget of information also came in useful for organist Alan Price when he registered himself as the arranger of the Animals' hit song House of the Rising Sun, and then sat back as the little nugget became a full-blown gold mine. Unfortunately, he admitted to tell the rest of the band, which caused the kind of resentment that men usually reserve for first wives. It was something that the Animals never fully recovered from. Where the Rolling Stones story gets interesting is when their manager, Andrew Oldham, commissioned composer David Whittaker to write and or arrange, depending on how you define them, orchestral versions of some of the Stones' catalogue. The orchestral version of The Last Time, while having little in common with any of the previous versions, had a catchy theme that was subsequently sampled by the Verve for their 1997 monster hit, Bittersweet Symphony. Unfortunately for them, former Stones manager Alan Klein held the copyright to the song and refused to grant the Verve a license to use it, after it had already been released and become a hit. Reportedly, Klein said he was a reasonable man and wanted a 50-50 split, 50 for Mick and 50 for Keith. 100% of the publishing royalties went to Jagger and Richards, leaving Verve singer Richard Ashcroft feeling bitter, not sweet. Though many, many years later, Klein relented, and the Verve got a sliver of songwriting royalties for which I'm sure they'll be eternally grateful. Less famously, when Rick Wakeman was haunting the streets of Soho as a session musician, he was paid £10 to play the piano on the smash hit hymn Morning Has Broken by Cat Stevens, now known as Yusuf Islam, or more recently, just Yusuf. At short notice, Rick was asked to knock out a new intro for this old tune. Thinking on his feet, Rick repurposed a piece he had written for his first solo album. Cat liked it so much he wanted more, but Rick explained it was already taken, so he would have to settle for a few bars. Anyone who's ever heard The Six Wives of Henry VIII will recognise it instantly from the track Catherine Howard. When the song charted in the top 10 in multiple countries around the world, Rick was brassed off to learn that he wasn't even credited with performing, never mind co-writing the track. It's a shame Rick's dad, Cyril, wasn't a lawyer. Almost there, I promise. The point I'm making is that apportioning songwriting shares, when there's more than one person involved in making a record, is almost as complex as the Sunday Times cryptic crossword, but only if you don't opt to share everything equally. We were just about to find out how complicated. A lot of the praise for our first album went to Fish and his lyrics. Journalists usually only wanted to talk to Fish. He was always great for a headline, exceptionally garrulous, and enjoyed talking about himself and the essence of our songs. Understandably, he's not the first singer to fall for this. He started to believe the hype, that Marillion's success was down to him. To paraphrase sci-fi writer Philip K. Dick, the problem with introspection is that it has no end, and our singer was spending a lot of time looking inwardly. There's an argument to be made that Marillion would still be playing pubs without Fish, but that's not the same as saying that Fish was Marillion, because it ignores the fundamentals, not to mention the importance of the musicians and performers in Marillion. We weren't merely his backing band. It takes 100 different factors, including the fortunate roll of the dice, to succeed in music. After the Fugazi album was finished, I received a phone call from John. Fish had been bending his ear about publishing. Putting it bluntly, Fish felt he deserved a bigger slice of the publishing pie, a 50% slice to be precise, which, no matter how you cut it, is a lot of pie. John told me that he had managed to persuade Fish that everyone in the band deserved to get some bunts from the songwriting, and if Fish were to take 50%, there wouldn't be a lot left for the rest of us. Fish agreed that 50% should be divided equally between the 5 of us, and the remaining 50% be split equally between the lyrics and the music writers. This meant that as the lyric writer, Fish would always get 35%, and any band member who didn't contribute to the writing would get 10%. This was a radical change from equal shares, but, according to John, Fish was adamant. John advised us to accept it. In the interests of band harmony, we folded like cheap deck chairs in a storm. Are you seeing a familiar pattern here between band and singer? Fish asks, we acquiesce. So from Fugazi onwards, we started splitting the publishing income and advances unequally. To add to the fun, this meant we would have to sit down and agree who wrote what. Fish always wrote the lyrics, so that was the easy part. He also usually came up with the vocal melodies, known as the top line in the business, which most publishers would agree also constituted writing. Thankfully, Fish wasn't aware of that, or if he was, he didn't push for a share of the music writing royalties too, so he never got a bigger cut than 35% for each song while he was in the band. Apart from Jonathan sticking his hand out, we also had a case to settle with Mick. He had been busy getting advice on what he could squeeze us for financially. He was on his 20% record royalties for his performance on script, and 20% of the songwriting royalties, but he felt he deserved something for the band name, which he had dreamed up while staring intently at the spine of a Tolkien novel called The Silmarillion. Inspiration can strike at any time, right? After some haggling, we settled on a one-off payment of £10,000. Just when we thought we could stand down the lawyers, along came Brian and Diz wanting a share of the songwriting royalties from the first album. Where there's a hit, there's a writ, as the old adage goes. We were finding that you didn't even need a hit, just a few disgruntled ex-members. I have some sympathy for Brian's claim. He did come up with some of the music for The Web, Forgotten Sons, He Knows You Know, and Garden Party. But as far as I could tell, Diz was less deserving. But like World Wars, they came as a pair, so we agreed to pay them both the same share each, which amounted to most of mine and Pete's 20%. The upshot of all this was that from Fugazi onwards, Fish would be on 35%, and the rest of us would have to go through the awkward and arbitrary process of deciding who wrote what on each song when an album was finished in order to split the remaining 65% between us.
Inevitably, this was put off for as long as possible because we wanted to avoid the unseemly spectacle of having to say things like, "I thought I might have written that part," or "Doesn't my playing on that song deserve a little more than 5%? It was shaping up to be like a Noel Coward farce without any of the bon mots.
We needn't have worried because, being robustly British in our approach, each of us would be politely suggesting that this person or that person should surely get more, not less. Happily, we never once argued over how the songs were split and agreed to let it go and get back to being friends in a band together again. That all changed when Fish left. The only manners we had then were bad ones. We had an explosive and expensive legal battle over the publishing, amongst other things. But let's jump off that bridge when we get to it. We ended the Fugazi tour with the now traditional sold-out shows at Hammersmith Odeon, 3 this time. Backstage there was a small bar up at the top floor where the band and their guests could meet after the show. Fish and I headed up there to steady our nerves before the final gig. The bar was empty as we didn't allow guests backstage before we played. After a few minutes standing at the bar, we noticed a small figure in a long dark coat, a trilby, and round glasses, sat alone at a small table by the door. Curious, we walked over and said hello. Like he was born to play a walk-on part in a Truffaut movie, Robert Fripp introduced himself. He motioned for us to sit down, and after a bit of awkward small talk, he said in a conspiratorial voice that he was planning to sack his band, King Crimson. And he was doing so, I'm quoting here, to keep them on their toes. Fish and I swapped quizzical glances as we headed to the dressing room, all the while with me wondering if Fripp's unique leadership style might have given Fish some ideas. Fugazi was released the following day. Better late than never. The failure of Punch and Judy to set the charts alight was partially blamed on the lack of a promo video. Given the subject matter, I'm not exactly sure how we would have pitched it to the label or production team. For Assassin, the next single, we discovered green screen technology and spent a tidy sum making a load of twaddle that not even Fish understood. This was a mimed performance thrown together with lots of meaningless computer graphics, pretty girl, and some James Bond bad guys, topped off with a Ford Cortina. The highlight of the day was when the Cortina stunt driver confidently assured the film crew that he would have plenty of stopping room after mounting a ramp and sailing through a paper green screen, only to crash into the wall on the other side of the warehouse. He gave a shaky, if somewhat embarrassed wave to assure us all that he was all right. In a rare week off in April, John took us all to Tenerife to meet his business partner, Alan Crux. He had something he wanted to show us. Apart from his interest in Bravado, the merchandise company John had employed to manufacture and sell our T-shirts, Crux was involved in property. When we got to Tenerife, still amazed at John's generosity, we discovered Crux was trying to sell us a timeshare. It was like being in an episode of Only Fools and Horses. I kept expecting Del and Rodney to pop up from behind the bar and offer me some knockoff merch from the back of their Reliant Robin, though instead of some dodgy Fred Perry tops, this was a few units with views of the beach, apparently. I didn't know whether to be appalled or unsurprised. I assiduously avoided his smarmy sales patter and worked on my tan until it was time to go home. We headed into the summer filled with various European festival appearances and an idea that we might yet again attempt to conquer the USA and Canada. The first gig on the continent was in Copenhagen on the 4th of May. We planned to take a ferry there from Yarmouth Docks. John added a date in Great Yarmouth that we could play on the way. The gig itself was uneventful, but there were lots of people hanging around afterwards. I didn't suppose much ever happened in Great Yarmouth, so a band like Marillion playing was a big deal, and the locals wanted to party. Fish took a fancy to a young lady who was with her boyfriend. The boyfriend was so upset about Fish's advances and his girlfriend's obvious delight at the attention she was getting that he resolved to end it all and marched into the sea. Fish, clearly fearing for the poor lad's safety, went after him and with a right hook broke his jaw to stop him drowning himself. This resulted in the police being called and Paul Lewis having to leave 2 young ladies unattended in his hotel room while he attempted to save Fish from spending a night in the cells. Paul left his attaché case containing the night's takings, a cool $10,000 in cash, in the room. But he wasn't worried because he'd handcuffed it to the TV pedestal stand, just like he'd seen the mafia do in movies. On returning to his room, he discovered the TV on the floor, the stand carefully dismantled, and his attaché case and handcuffs missing. The mafia would have no doubt tossed Paul into the sea in a concrete overcoat, but we were a little more forgiving. The police were called for a second time that night, probably their busiest night all year. They said that the 2 missing suspects were known to them, and they would have no trouble tracking them down. They were as good as their word. They found the case broken open in the back of a car belonging to one of the ladies. There was only £50 missing. We decided not to press charges and headed for the continent. Somewhere along the road, and God knows how, our singer had acquired a set of conga drums. Is there a more chilling sentence in the English language? He felt he needed something to do on stage during the instrumental parts of the set. The congas are traditionally played with the hands, but Fish was having none of that and used a pair of Ian's sticks to bash the crap out of them. He might have had a certain flair for the congas, and he was certainly good at hitting things, as the lad in Great Yarmouth had discovered. But hitting things in time was a whole other skill. Fish, being Fish, insisted that his less than metronomic strike rate be mic'd up for all to hear. The crew dutifully did as they were told and carefully positioned a microphone in front of the congas. The cable leading from the mic was then carefully tossed under Ian's drum riser. This is what's known in the trade as an air patch. If you saw us around that time, then you're welcome. Not so easily put off, Fish upgraded his on-stage percussion to something that was so loud it didn't need a microphone to be heard above the band. Timbales. This annoyed Ian the way dragging nails across a blackboard can sometimes set people on edge, so he instructed the crew to leave them on the truck. Fish gave up after that. Ian has a presence about him that commands respect. Even Fish was wary of crossing him. Ian brought a professionalism to the band that went beyond deciding who was allowed to hit things, in time or not, on stage. Steve, Pete and I felt like we had to take playing on stage seriously. Ian set a standard and he expected the musicians in the band to meet it. I'm sure this work ethic served to keep the 3 of us, but especially Pete and me, straighter and more sober than we otherwise would have been over the years. Fish, being the singer, wasn't so easily swayed by Ian's influence and started to gravitate away from us and towards socialising with the crew, who were less fickle about setting parameters on their partying. Don't get me wrong, we all like to drink, just not as much as Fish.